Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. So today's topic is on cheat meals for nutrition. So we're going to cover just kind of some general information about cheat meals. So I had someone kind of ask about them, but they didn't ask any specific questions. So I'm just going to go through some general thoughts, and then if this sparks any individual questions, people can email us at brutalironGym@gmail.com, and we'll get you a specific answer. If it's an important enough question that we think other people would need to know, we'll make another podcast. But the reason why I mention it this way is there's a lot to know about nutrition. So sometimes when you're given just a general topic, I could talk for 30 minutes and still not cover everything you might want to know. That might be specific to your scenario. So if you have anything that you would miss in this, please reach out. We want to make sure you get everything you need from these podcasts. So the first thing we're going to look at is a cheat meal. That is a single meal, not a cheat day. So that's one mistake a lot of people make is they just kind of bomb an entire day of their diet for this cheat meal. And some reasons you'll see, or some common kind of mistakes you'll see, is people will undereat during the daytime because they know they're going to have a big meal in the evening, which is typically when people have their cheat meals. So typically they're going to have them kind of in the evening or before they go to bed. So they'll undereat during the day and then try to overeat at night, and that actually makes things worse because by undereating during the day, you're setting your body up to be behind in calories more than normal. That sends a signal to the body above normal to retain any extra calories. So it's kind of like if you were just kind of floating along doing your normal thing, and then all of a sudden something happened to you. You're not really prepared for it. You just kind of roll with it. Whatever happens and sticks and stays is whatever it is. But if all day you're waiting for this thing to come, waiting for this thing to come, waiting for this thing to come, then all of a sudden, like when it comes, for us, that might be nice because we might be more prepared if it's a negative thing. But the body, what happens is if you spend all day slightly behind in calories, what it says is, oh my gosh, man, we're low today. Like, what's going on today? We don't have enough. We don't have enough. So it says, as soon as there's anything extra, holy crap, let's save that because this feels stressful. So it's basically the body starts kind of feeling the stress of being underfed. So then when it gets the surplus of calories, it's more likely to store them as body fat. If you eat your normal calorie amount, and then all of a sudden you throw a cheat meal on top of it, the body will go, oh, this is cool. It'll use whatever little excess it might need for repairs and metabolism type stuff. And then it'll be more likely to just get rid of the excess. Okay? So it's important not to limit your entire daily intake in preparation for a cheat meal. So people will do that because they think they're saving calories. No, you're actually setting yourself up to retain more fat, to retain more of the calories. So that's a big no-no. So let's not do that. Let's fix that already. And then the other thing you'll see is people kind of they'll just have kind of bad habits on top of a cheat meal. So they might want to have their cheat meal on a Saturday. Well, they get up later on a Saturday than they do on a Sunday. Than they do during the week. So all of a sudden they kind of like skip a meal in the morning. Now that would be okay if they were to be awake less, but typically we stay up later in the weekends. So even though we got up late, we stay up late. So it kind of, we end up being awake for the same amount of time, but now we had one less meal because we slept through our first meal. Then they'll kind of just, since they have no set schedule mostly on the weekends, people kind of piss around and they miss a meal during the day. And then, like, if they do get a meal, it's usually something quick and short that wasn't really their full normal meal. So again, this creates that under-eating effect. By missing a meal, then by sleeping in, and then by missing a meal and or eating less than you should during the day because you're quote-unquote too busy to eat correct, then again, when you go into your cheat meal, you're more likely to retain extra calories as body fat than you are to just get rid of them and burn them off or kind of go to the bathroom and get rid of them. So that's something we want to think of is a cheat meal is very helpful because When we're on a restrictive diet, and we're going to talk about, by the way, for fat loss and muscle gain and strength gain. So we're talking about everybody. So this isn't just for fat loss diets. But typically, when we kind of eat in a structured manner, um, when somebody's dieting, they can sometimes be too restrictive in their calories, and their body starts to kind of down regulate to the low caloric amount. So it kind of like slows down its metabolism to adjust to the lower calories. So we've talked about this before, that our body does change to what we do. So if I went out every day and ran a mile, the first time is miserable, the 100th time it feels a lot easier. Well, that's because our body adapts. So if I go from a diet of, say, 2,400 calories down to 2,000, so 2,400 down to 2,000, my body would have been running at the speed and the expectations of 2,400. And then all of a sudden, when it went to 2,000, it says, holy crap, where is this 400 going to come from? At first, it comes from body fat, which is good because we get fat loss. And then slowly the body starts to figure out, well, instead of us taking off all these reserves, which we think is security and safety, so the body thinks body fat is just saved energy for later. So it's kind of like money in a bank account, is it saves up, even if it doesn't need it right now, it saves it up for later because you never know. So that's what body fat is. If we constantly eat in excess calories, our body says, well, you never know, I might need these calories later on for survival, so I'm just going to store this as body fat. So it would have been a response to our body from way, way, way back when, whenever food wasn't readily available. Our body would have created the ability and increased the desire to store body fat. So that way, when calories were in excess, it could store them as body fat. So that way, when calories were missing or they were hard to find, then it would have the body fat to chew up for energy rather than die. So our body is conditioned to store body fat when there's excess calories. It's a natural response. It helps us stay alive, so it's kind of a helpful thing. But right now, it's not helpful because we tend to have food whenever we want it, and aesthetically, we don't like the look of body fat. So all that is to say, when you're dieting and you go with that caloric reduction, say for example from 2,400 down to 2,000, your body starts to adjust to that, so it doesn't have to continually spend the bank account. Okay, so it doesn't have to continually burn body fat. So if it were to fully adjust down to 2,000, now all of a sudden you don't have any fat loss because it's able to only use what you're giving it. The benefit of a cheat meal, properly done, is it shocks the body from adjusting. So as the body would say, man, 2,000 again, 2,000 again, maybe I need to start going down. All of a sudden you eat a cheat meal and you have a random day of like 2,200 or 2,400, and the body goes, oh, okay, I guess I don't need to adjust. And then the next day when you go back to 2,000, it burns more body fat and says, crap, this again. So you're keeping it from down regulating and adjusting to where you would then not get fat loss and have to again reduce calories. So when people make mistakes with fat loss diets, is they'll continually reduce calories and they only do cardio, which ends up burning calories but has no long-term positive effect. So when you lift weights, what that does is there's residual caloric burn happening during the recovery period. So even after you're done lifting, you still burn more calories than you would normally because your body has to fix and repair itself from the lifting. Then also muscle tissue requires calories to kind of stay alive. So our body has to feed muscle tissue. So if you lift weights and you have muscle, your body burns more calories at rest and it can't down regulate as well to a low caloric number. So by lifting weights, doing resistance training, you burn more overall calories per 24-hour period due to the recovery phase, and then you ensure that you have more caloric burn at rest and your metabolism stays higher at all other days as well. So when people just do pure cardio, it's a ridiculously stupid use of time because you're only getting the caloric burn at the time you're doing it. Whereas if you lifted weights, you could do the same damn thing, get the caloric burn while you're doing it, but then get the residual caloric burn and get the muscle effect. So pure cardio is stupid when you could take that time to do weight circuits. So we talked about muscle cardio before, which is kind of using like lightweight circuits as your cardio, to where you get out of breath and it makes it feel like a cardiovascular training session, but you also get the muscular benefits because you're using weights to do it. So that is in podcast 30. So way, way, way back when in podcast 30, we talked about the benefit of muscle cardio on how to lose fat without losing muscle. So that is very, very, very helpful. So you want to focus on that as your activity level when you're trying to lose fat. And the podcast 181 explains why using muscle damage for fat loss, using weights to help during fat loss is more effective than using cardio. So I'll say it again. If you're doing fat loss and you're spending your time doing cardiovascular training, not resistance training, you're making a mistake. You are doing it ineffective. And if you've heard this information before and you're still doing it wrong, you are stupid. Yep, no one's going to like that, and I'm saying it on purpose to make you pissed off and angry, so hopefully you'll make the change. Okay? So I'm intentionally being a jerk, which is most of the day I'm unintentionally being a jerk. But I just want to really get the point across that if you're going to put effort, if you're going to spend time exercising, that is already a strain on most people. Why not get the best effects out of it? So why spend 40 minutes doing something half-assed, but yet you have to do all your effort? Like cardio is hard to do when you do it correctly. You have to put in a lot of effort. But why the hell would you put in all that effort and only get like half the results? It doesn't make any damn sense. So if you're going to do physical activity to help with fat loss, do resistance training, not cardio. Okay. Now, the other thing is not doing consistent caloric reductions all the time, because again, eventually you have to kind of take away. And if you started your diet at say 2,400 calories, you went to 2,000, that was kind of like struggle, but it kind of plateaued. So now you went to 1,800, that plateaued, 1,600, that plateaued, 1,400. All of a sudden you're going to run out of calories and you feel like crap. So it's important to, like we said, use resistance training because it helps keep your natural caloric burn per day higher, so you don't have to continually reduce all the time. And then doing a cheat meal strategically and correctly actually prevents that adjustment by the body down regulate to the lower caloric amount. It prevents that from happening as fast. So therefore you don't have to do as quickly or as large of caloric reductions. So pretty cool, right? So I've actually had people get ready for competition diet, like they've gone on stage, had 6-pack abs, under 10% body fat, and we did a 12 or 16 week diet where they did not have to reduce calories. Yep. So, and I've done that dozens and dozens of times, to where we used their activity level. We used resistance training, and we increased the intensity and the cyclical nature of it, and we increased their use of cheat meals and decrease of calories on off days. So we increased their caloric cycling, and we modified their training to increase overall workload volume as they got closer to the competition. And by doing both of those elements, they did not have to reduce their overall calories. Their overall calories stayed the same, and they got freaking in shape, under 10% body fat, got on stage. Never had to do more than 20 minutes of cardio on a single cardio piece of equipment. Never. And they didn't have to reduce their total caloric intake. And I've done that dozens of times. So it's absolutely ridiculously helpful to understand how to do all this stuff, because there's no damn need for you to reduce calories all the time and spend hours on like cardio equipment every week. That's absolutely stupid and asinine, which is my dad's favorite word. It's so dumb when there's better information available. And there's ways to make something miserable less miserable and more effective while being less miserable. Why the hell would you not do that? So enough of my rant because I think I'm only on the first point of the entire podcast yet. so, but a cheat meal should be a cheat meal, not a cheat day. So a cheat day, like we said, it kind of messes up things and it causes more fat storage than it actually causes the benefits of a metabolism boost. So the two types we kind of have of cheat meals is one can just be having fun new foods. So where you save it for a date night or a night out with friends and stuff like that. The pros of that is it gives you a mental release from your normal dietary foods. The cons is sometimes the new food can upset your stomach if your diet is very restrictive. So the bacteria in your gut have kind of formulated and normalized to your usual foods. So when you throw weird foods in, sometimes they can cause digestive stress. You can get bloating, gassy, kind of bathroom issues, stuff like that. So that is sometimes common with fun, weird foods as your cheat meals. But the pro is you get the mental release from all your normal diets. And it also allows you to be more socially, I can't really think of the word, but socially adaptive. So if you're out and about having date night, you'd want to have fun with whatever foods are kind of available to you rather than having to pack your normal dietary foods and just having more of those. That's kind of boring, right? Yeah. So we have fun new foods is one of our cheat meal styles. There's pros and cons to it. And then we have cheat meals where we do the exact same food, but you just eat more of it. So it's your normal dietary food, you just eat more. And this is actually really helpful for people who have craving issues. Because if you eat more of the same food, it doesn't spike new cravings. So if somebody has craving issues and they eat weird food, that can kind of awaken the body to sugars and other types of fats and concentrations of nutrients it's not used to, and it can spike cravings. And like we said, it can cause the digestive stress. When you eat the same normal dietary foods, but you just eat more of them, you don't get cravings and you don't get that digestive stress. Now it is boring, so you don't get the release, the mental release from the dietary foods. So that's the negative to it. But for both styles of diet, cheat meals, there's pros and cons. So I've had diet styles where I had my cheat meals with the exact same food because I had really sharp, large goals. So I've lost 50 pounds in 10 weeks or less 3 times. I lost 70 pounds in 10 months once. And those were diets where I had big picture goals in mind. So I didn't want cravings to get in the way. I didn't want digestive stress to get in the way. So I just ate the same damn food. I just ate more of it as my cheat meals. And then I've had diets where I had fun and I had to have ice cream or pizza or I had fun stuff for cheat meals. So I've kind of used it both ways. Now, timing of cheat meals. When should you have them? Typically post workout, like after the biggest workout of the week, is the best time to have a cheat meal. So if you have a really big leg day training, then you would want to have your cheat meal on the night of, after that training. Having the cheat meal before the training does not help much. Okay, it's just going to make you really uncomfortable actually usually when you train. But having it after the training, what happens is you're trying to have a caloric surplus to shock the body to prevent it from downregulating metabolism. But if you also have a purpose or a use for those calories, that kind of makes it fun too. So if I go and beat up a bunch of muscle tissue, and then I feed extra food above normal, I can actually build more muscle than normal. So it helps me kind of get a boost on that body part. So for my aesthetic people listening to this, if you have a body part that you're trying to catch up to other body parts, have your cheat meal on the night of that day of training. So if you're trying to catch up your arms to everything else, have your cheat meal on arm day. If you're trying to catch up your legs to everything else, have a cheat meal on leg day. And if you're trying to catch up your back to everything else, have a cheat meal on back day. So try to match it to the body part that's lagging behind. For my strength athletes, okay, listen to this, you would want to have your cheat meal on the evening of the most grueling workout you have. So if you have a day where you do squats and deadlifts together, you probably want to have it after that. Okay, so anything where you have a lot of stress onto the joints and connective tissue, try to have your extra calories on that night of that workout. So that'll help you actually boost recovery at the same time you're getting the metabolic effect of the cheat meal. So, and again, it's best in the evening after the workout, not before the workout. And it's not really as helpful to have a cheat meal on an off day. Now, is it better to have a cheat meal than not have a cheat meal? We're about to get into that. But in general, when you're going to have a cheat meal, because it's going to happen, it's better to have it on a training day than an off day. So if you're having a day where you're very inactive, it's going to cause more likelihood of those calories to be stored as body fat, and they don't actually contribute to his recovery overall as well. So having your cheat meal on the right day can actually just help you prolong your training and health and recovery, as well as getting the metabolic effect, as well as getting the muscle growth effect. So you kind of get three big positives, rather than having your cheat meal at the wrong time of the day or on the wrong day, and you missed out on some of those positives. Cool. Now, so should we have one? When do we have one? How much? Blah, 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 blah. Impossible for me to answer perfectly for every listener. So here's some general thoughts. If you are aiming for fat loss, and let's say that you have, let's just go in general here, okay? So if I'm aiming for fat loss, we've talked before that you need to track your adherence to diets. So you need to know every single day, am I eating the right food per meal? Am I getting this meal right or wrong? Am I even having the meal when I should? So we've talked about adherence charts that we've offered for free, brutaliron@gmail.com. Ask us if you want one, where you go through your day and you say, okay, breakfast, check mark if I got it right, X if I ate the wrong foods, a blank if I skipped it. So if you go through your week and you do that for every single meal, that's all you have to do is just check X or blank. And at the end of the week, when you add up how many meals you've messed up compared to how many meals you've gotten right, we've found, and I've done this for years, so I don't care like what everybody says, I know it's fact because I've seen it for years and years, is if somebody adheres to a diet, this is for general fat loss, not people good at trying to get on stage, but for general fat loss, if they can adhere to a diet about 90%, where you get 9 out of 10 meals right, you're doing great and you're going to get fabulous results. So if I'm having say 4 meals a day times 7 days a week, let's just say that's actually 28, but to make the math easy, let's say 30. So if I'm having 30 meals a week, and I know 9 out of 10 correct is good enough to get good results, then that means I get 3 meals a week where I can be off my schedule. Okay? So that would mean that you have the chance for 3 cheat meals. Now, easily one of those 3 is just going to be you screwed something up, got a mistake, or some horrible position you were put in at work where they said they were catering lunch, but they brought in pizza. And you're like, shit. So you sometimes will get caught in bad situations. So you might have an allowance of 3, but 2 of them ended up being like kind of crap you had to use for life circumstances. So that means you only get 1 that you get to use kind of in the way that you want. And that could be a date night with a spouse, it could be going out with friends, stuff like that. So you want to adhere to your normal diet standards at 90%. And within that level of adherence, if you have the extra meal here or there, to have a cheat meal, that's great. Now, that's for most people doing a general kind of normal style diet where they have a set calorie or food volume that they're supposed to do every day. So it's just kind of the same thing all the time. That's what their goal is. Then you get, a 90% adherence level. Whatever you kind of don't make as a general mistake, you can use as your cheat meals per week. Now, if you're doing caloric cycling, where you're actually having less food on off days, more food on training days, strategically on purpose, and you're aware of the training days like being only maybe a slight reduction below maintenance level calories, where the off days are large reductions below maintenance level calories, and that variance is allowing you to also prevent some kind of metabolic adjustment, then having 1 to 2 cheat meals a week on top of that caloric cycling is actually really beneficial as well. So again, I might have a cheat meal on my leg days, I might have a slightly below maintenance on my upper body days, and then I might have a significantly below maintenance on my off days. And by having that cycling pattern, it's preventing my metabolism from downgrading to the lowest days. So I do this for my competition clients, and in podcast 173, we discuss the need for caloric cycling during diets. So we talk about why it's super duper helpful. Now, if you're one of my clients and you notice, holy crap, I don't do any caloric cycling. What the hell? I use your training volumes as your caloric cycling. So I change your caloric demand rather than changing your caloric intake. And the reason why is when you do caloric cycling diets, you could potentially have 3 different diets you have to follow per week. So you might have your high day, your medium day, and your low day. For most people I work with, they have a hard freaking time just getting one damn diet correct. Okay, and they have every day of the week to practice it, and they still screw the shit up. So if you are in that category, and hopefully I'm not being too mean here, I'm just being more jokey than trying to be mean. But if you struggle to adhere to one structure of a diet, I am not going to write you 3 because that's just going to make things feel way crazier and more sporadic. But my aesthetic-based clients who are going to compete, and they do this for a living, they're trainers too, so they want to live out the lifestyle, and this is their thing. They're going to adhere to a single day totally freaking fine. So I can write them 2 structures or 3 structures throughout the week, and they'll do great with it. So the reason why sometimes I have only 1 caloric structure per client is because I don't want you to have to worry about the adherence level, and we're probably already having trouble with that adherence. And I use your training as your change of caloric demand, which creates caloric cycling. Okay? So I do a lot of the work to protect you. But that's why if you do a same caloric level diet and you're saying, what the hell, why are you telling me caloric cycling is best, but well, I don't do it? Yes, you do. I have it hidden for you. Now, if you're a fat loss client, well, not a client of mine, just if you're doing fat loss in general, and let's say that you're really, really, really restrictive on calories and you're really pushing yourself, and all of a sudden everything kind of plateaus, then you can throw a cheat meal in once to twice a week, and that can often help kind of bust you through a plateau because your metabolism is probably down-regulated to your caloric amount. So by spiking the caloric amount, it can kind of boost your metabolism a little bit up, and that'll actually help you burn more body fat. So if you're inconsistent and you're plateaued, so you're like, man, I'm doing a diet, but I really can't see any results. And somebody were to say, well, are you like ultra tight on your diet and your calories are really low every day? And you're like, well, some days, yes, some days I kind of mess up, and I have a meal here, a meal there, and I kind of get things wrong every now and then. Don't try to worry about a damn cheat meal. Worry about consistency. So you got to track your adherence and get your adherence level to 90%. Once you're at 90%, then cheat meals kind of matter. If your adherence is like 60, 70%, then the cheat meal isn't making a damn bit of difference. So you got to get your adherence level correct first. Okay? So there's some food for thought, some things to think of. For our muscle building and strength building listeners, okay, if you're trying to do a super lean gain diet, like you're trying to gain just muscle, no body fat, whatsoever, you will notice that you will plateau quickly. And what I mean by this is you might have a very small caloric surplus that you accidentally use some days because you're a little more active than other days. So you might actually end up using your caloric surplus that was supposed to go towards muscle building as just general activity calories. So that's something that, like, if you notice you're plateaued and you have a very small goal of a caloric surplus because you don't want to get fat, you're probably plateauing because you're using up that caloric surplus as energy. So throwing in a cheat meal once to twice, if not 3 times a week, on your biggest training days can actually help you create more of that surplus on the days when you would use it most towards muscle building. So again, it would be after the workout, not before the workout, and you want to do it on the body parts that you feel are lagging behind. So this can help you get that surplus and get you those muscle gains, and doing it at the right time equates to more muscle building than actual fat retention, and it'll make sure that you actually have surpluses available for growth. So if you're trying to do it very strict, but you notice you're plateauing, like I said, you probably need to create some boost in calories, and you can do that through cheat meals. Now, if you're a strength athlete, you want to focus more on sleep than on food. So the nervous system repairs itself more so through sleep than it does food. So our muscle building listeners, we build muscle by excess food, so you have to have more food. Your strength building listeners, If you're doing training that beats up your nervous system because you want to get stronger, then you